Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So we still did not complete our discussion on the life of Imam Malik rahimahullah. Hence, very briefly, we will inshallah discuss the trials that he had to endure. Then we will discuss about his demise, and we will inshallah also quote some of his advisors. And then we will move on to discuss his other books, and we'll conclude with the discussion on his Muwaṭṭa. So just make dua, inshallah, that we get barakah in our time. You know, Fazlur Rahmani always says that we need someone's du'as and we need another person's karamat. Maybe some of you is very, very pious. So we need your karamat that we can finish lots of work in this limited time. So like every other scholar, Imam Malik rahimahullah, he also had to face his fair share of hardship and trials. When the rulers changed, then he was tortured. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, he had to endure the ordeal in which he was publicly humiliated and he was very, very severely beaten. He was beaten to such an extent that his arm was wrenched out of its socket. Ibrahim ibn Ahmad, he narrates the impact of this whipping. He says, أنه كان ينظر إلى مالك إذا أقيم من مجلسه حمل يده اليمنى أو يده اليسرى بالأخرى. That when he would stand up, because of the whipping that he got, he actually had to hold his one hand with the other hand because that entire hand was out of its socket. And Muhammad ibn Umar, he says, فضربه بالسياط ومدت يده حتى انخلعت كتفه. That he was hit in such a way that it actually came out from the shoulder. So there are different reasons cited in the books regarding why he was tortured. Alama ibn Jarir al-Tabari rahimahullah, he says, كان مالك قد ضرب بالسياط واختلف في من ضربه وفي السبب الذي ضرب فيه. That he was accused on who exactly hit him and what was the reason that he had to get this punishment. So the one reason that is given is that he was accused of issuing a verdict that it is permissible to break the oath of allegiance with the ruler. Alama ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, he quotes with his sanad to Marwan al-Tatari that أن أبا جعفر نهى مالكا عن الحديث ليس على مستقر الطلاق. That Imam Malik was prohibited from mentioning this hadith, that the divorce of a coerced person, a person who's forced, it does not take effect. So this year, the Malikis, they give fatwa on this view. Hanafis look at other dalail, etc., and they issue a different ruling. But the reason why he prohibited him from issuing this, because Imam Malik rahimahullah was using wisdom, he was using diplomacy. Instead of very clearly saying that you should break your allegiance with the leader, he mentioned this here that laysa ala mustaqrat talaq. So this means that the pledge of allegiance of the ruler can be broken. It's like in a very metaphorical way he was quoting this here. So Abu Ja'far then what he done is ثُمَّ دَسَّ إِلَيْهِ مَا يَسْأَلُهُ عَنْهُ. So he prohibited him that you can no more quote this. Then he sent a spy that quietly go and ask him, let us see if he's going to still quote it. So فَحَدَّثَ بِهِ عَلَى رُؤُوسِ النَّاسِ. Imam Malik rahimahullah, obviously he was not going to mince his words, he was outspoken, so he still went and he mentioned this narration in front of everybody. فَضَرَبَهُ بِالسِّيَاط. And due to this year, he was lashed. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, he then cites his chain, and then he quotes from Muhammad ibn Umar that he said, لما دعي مالك بن أنس وشور وسمع منه وقبل قوله شنف له الناس وحسدوه وبغوه بكل شيء. That what's the whole reason for this and the background of this? Imam Malik rahimahullah was now getting lots of honor. He was getting a lot of prominence. Now leaders were starting to make mashwara with him. The views that he mentioned, you remember we quoted yesterday that if he had to say anything, even the leaders didn't have the guts of asking him that what's your basis for this. So that's the amount of authority he was getting and the amount of respect he was getting. So now others started to become jealous for him. And they now began to oppress him. So then فلما ولي جعفر بن سليمان على المدينة سعوا به إليه وكثروا عليه عنده وقالوا so they now these people, his hasidin, those who were jealous for him, they now went to the newly appointed ruler of Medina and they exaggerated things about Imam Malik rahimahullah, and they told him that look, he doesn't believe that anyone should pledge allegiance to you, and he's quoting this narration here in order to show that the people shouldn't pledge their allegiance to you, and if they're forced to do so, then it's not even counted. Now, you know, generally Imam Malik rahimahullah, he did not get involved in politics. However, because this year concerned the governor of Medina, that lamma wulliya ala al-Madina, when he became the governor of Medina, so therefore Imam Malik rahimahullah expressed his view. But that too, you can see in such a vague and such an ambiguous way. So because of this year, فغضب جعفر بن سليمان فدعا بمالك فاحتج عليه بما رفع إليه عنه ثم جرده ومده فضربه بالسياط ومدت يده حتى انخلعت كتفه. So this year we spoke about that his whole arm came out from the socket. وارتكب منه أمر عظيم, that such huge oppression they perpetrated against him. But then look what the narrator mentions. He says, فوالله ما زال مالك بعد ذلك ظرف رفعة من الناس وعلو من أمره وإعظام الناس له, that he done this to publicly disgrace Imam Malik rahimahullah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased the honor of Imam Malik rahimahullah. وكأنما كانت تلك السياط التي ضرب بها حليا حلي به. It is as if these straps which he got from the stripes which he got from the whipping, they were like ornaments that adorned him. Alama Zahabi rahimahullah, he quotes more regarding this punishment. He quotes with his sanad. He says, وبه حدثنا أحمد بن إسحاق قال أخبرنا محمد بن أحمد بن راشد قال سمعت أبا داود يقول حكى لي بعض أصحاب ابن وهب عنه أن مالك لما ضرب حلق. So his first punishment was that his entire beard was shaved off. Now we spoke about how huge his beard was. So when a person has a long beard all his life, and you know it's his integrity, etc., if you shave it, he will feel like it is as if he is naked. The shaving of the beard, which is a hallmark of dignity, that itself is a huge punishment. A female can relate to this, like if you shave off all her hair. So like this, you can imagine what a humiliation it is. So this is like the punishment he's been given. Then وَحُمِلَ عَلَى بَعِيرٍ, then he was now put on a camel. فَقِيلَ لَهُ نَادِي عَلَى نَفْسِكَ. So to translate this in our context, it says that you want to talk, now talk. So then Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said, ألا من عرفني فقد عرفني ومن لم يعرفني فأنا مالك بن أنس أقول طلاق المكره ليس بالشيء. That in public now, imagine he's being whooped and he's being publicly disgraced like this here. They publicly trying to humiliate him, yet he still stood on haqq and he still said that if you want to know who I am Malik ibn Anas, and this is what I say. So then this news reached Ja'far ibn Sulaiman, and then he said, Adrikuhu anziluhu. There's nothing you can do, just let him go. So that's the one reason that is given on why he was tormented and why he was punished. Another reason that is given is that he used to issue the verdict that that nikahul mut'a, a temporary marriage, is not permissible. So Alama ibn Imad, he relates in Shadharat al-Zahab, وقيل إنه حمل إلى بغداد, that he was taken to Baghdad. فقال له واليها ما تقول في نكاح المتعة? What's your opinion on mut'a? So Imam Malik, he in front of the king, or in front of the leader, he still spoke haqq. He said, huwa haram, it's haram to get a temporary marriage. So then the governor asked him, then what are you going to say about the opinion of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu? Now there's a whole discussion on that, on whether Abdullah ibn Abbas was really of the opinion at the end, what was his final view, etc. Nevertheless, the common view that is quoted from Abdullah ibn Abbas, that he was of this view that mut'a, a temporary marriage, is permissible. So what do you say about his statement? So Imam Malik rahimahullah said, كلام غيره فيها أوفق لكتاب الله. Look at his wisdom in how he responds. You don't say that Ibn Abbas's view is wrong. You say that the view that others are saying that the mut'a is impermissible, this here corresponds more to the Quran. وأصر على القول بتحريمها. That he was persistent that it's haram. فطيف بها على ثور مشوها. That even the animal that he was put upon, that was like a mutilated bull. فكان يرفع القدر عن وجهه. That there was a lot of dust and dirt coming on his face, and he very publicly announced, in spite of getting punishment, يا أهل بغداد من لم يعرفني فليعرفني أنا مالك بن أنس فعل بي ما ترون لأقول بجواز نكاح المتعة ولا أقول به. All this is happening to me because they want me to say that it's permissible to enter into a temporary marriage. ولا أقول به, but I'll never say that. And then again he mentions that after that لم يزده الله إلا رفعة وكان ذلك كالتميم له. Like, you get a tawiz amulet that you want to put tawiz so that you can get the respect. So this here was like a amulet for him. فجزاه الله تعالى عن نفسه والأمة خيرا. Now I also want to quote what Allama Zahabi rahimahullah commented regarding these trials which Imam Malik rahimahullah to go through. So Allama Zahabi rahimahullah, he comments on this, and it's just comments, or maybe you can say advice, or actually you can even say like maybe consolement. So I'll just quote the Arabic. He says, هذا ثمرة المحنة المحمودة أنها ترفع العبد عند المؤمنين وبكل حال فهي بما كسبت أيدينا. This here is now in a general way. That the first statement was that this year, the honor that Imam Malik got after that, this is the fruits of going through difficulty for the sake of Islam. Thereafter, now general is speaking on difficulties which we go through. وبكل حال فهي بما كسبت أيدينا ويعفو الله عن كثير ومن يرد الله به خيرا يصب منه. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كل قضاء المؤمن خير له. وقال تعالى ولنبلونكم حتى نعلم المجاهدين منكم والصابرين. وأنزل تعالى في وقعة أحد قوله أولما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثليها قلتم أن هذا قل هو من عند أنفسكم. وقال وما أصابكم من مصيبة فبما كسبت أيديكم ويعفو عن كثير. So thereafter Imam Zahabi says فالمؤمن إذا امتحن صبر واتعظ واستغفر ولم يتشاغل بذم من انتقم منه فالله حكم مقسط. That if someone is oppressing you, you don't go around now criticizing them, even writing on social media against them publicly, trying to humiliate them. فالله حكم مقسط. Allah Ta'ala is watching. Allah Ta'ala will serve justice. ثم يحمد الله على سلامة دينه ويعلم أن عقوبة الدنيا أهون وخير له. With regards to the demise of Imam Malik rahimahullah, so his nephew and his son-in-law, Ismail ibn Abi Uwais narrates all that transpired. Allama ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, he quoted from him that اشتكى مالك ibn Anas فسألت بعض أهلنا عما قال عند الموت. They asked what were the final words of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So they said that Imam Malik rahimahullah, his final words was قالوا تشهد. He first read the shahada. ثم قال لله الأمر من قبل ومن بعد. This is the verse which he recited. وتوفي صبيحة 14 من شهر ربيع الأول. That on the 14th of ربيع الأول in the year 179 in the Khilafah of Harun al-Rashid. That is when he passed away. وصلى عليه عبد الله بن محمد بن إبراهيم. And this year also he وهو ابن زينب بنت سليمان, he became famously known by his mother. كان أمير المدينة. So you can see previously the Amir of Medina was trying to humiliate him. Now the Amir of Medina is actually reading his janaza salam. And thereafter he was buried in Baqi'. In contrast to his date of birth, there are no differences on the year of demise of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So Allama ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, he says وَلَمْ يَخْتَلِفْ أَصْحَابُ التَّوَارِيخ من أهل العلم بالخبر والسير أن مالكا رحمه الله توفي سنة 79 و100. Everyone agrees there are no differences of opinion. He passed away in the year 179. So at most there is only a difference on the month in which he passed away. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, he quotes from Mus'ab ibn Abdullah al-Zubayri that he said أنا أحفظ الناس لموت مالك. That I am the one who know well about the demise, the details of the demise of Imam Malik rahimahullah. Mata fi Safar. So he's saying that he passed away in Safar. But we quoted from Ismail ibn Abi Uwais that he passed away in Rabi'ul Awal. But he agrees on the year 179. So Alama Zahabi rahimahullah mentions that those who claim that he passed away in other years, they are clearly wrong. He says, تواترت وفاته في سنة 9 فلا اعتبار لقول من غلطه. That whoever is mentioning or giving as an opinion any other view, then they are clearly wrong. وجعلها في سنة 78. If anyone has to say that he passed away in 178, ولا اعتبار بقول حبيب كاتبه. That Habib, the one who is the scribe of Imam Malik, and also Mutarrif. You know, Mutarrif, yesterday you must have heard how much we're quoting, how much he quotes from Imam Malik. It's enough to show you how close he was to Imam Malik rahimahullah. So they mentioned that he passed away in 178 Hijri. But Alama Zahabi rahimahullah mentions that you don't give any consideration because it is incorrect. He passed away in 179. Now the differences on the date of his birth, that causes differences among scholars regarding his age. So Ismail ibn Abi Uwais, he says, وَكَانْ يَوْم مَاتَ ابْنُ 85 سَنَةً. That when he passed away, he was 85 years old. But Qadi Iyaz, he quotes, he says, وَقَالَ ابْنُ نَافِعْ وَابْنُ أبي أويس ومحمد بن سعيد وحبيب أنه توفي سنة 85. That he was 85 years old. وقيل 84. That some others say no, he was 84 years old. And from Ibn Nafi' it's mentioned that he was 87 years old. And Sahnun, so he was Sahnun mentioned that he was he was 87 years old. And Alama Waqidi rahimahullah mentions that he was 90 years old. And likewise, there were others who mentioned different ages. Some mentioned, for example, Firyabi and Abu Mus'ab, they mentioned that he was 86 years old. So now we said that he was born in 93. So if he passed away in 179, then how old he ought to be? How good is your math? That he would be 86 years old, isn't? So that would be the stronger view, that he was 86 years old. That those who mentioned that he was 86 years old, that is more correct, because from 93 and he passed away in 179. From all that we managed to discuss so briefly, we're supposed to discuss so many other points. But what we can derive from all of this is that after Imam Malik rahimahullah passed away, there was no one who could replace him. Ibn Uyayna rahimahullah, he says, ما ترك مالك على ظهر الأرض مثله. That when he passed away, there was no one like him on the surface of this earth. Because Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah passed away before. With regards to some advices about which Imam Malik rahimahullah gave, you know, we have to share some words of wisdom. When you go to a senior scholar, then you ask them for advice, isn't? If you go to your ustad, or you go to some great buzruk, or you go to some very elderly person, you ask him for advice. So these are advices of Imam Malik rahimahullah, and they are pertinent and actually very, very beneficial, and such advices that we can relate to. So picture yourself as if you went to go visit Imam Malik rahimahullah, and he's giving you this advice. So the first advice which he gives is about the importance of a person's environment and the impact that it can have on an individual. Ashab ibn Abdul Aziz, he says that Imam Malik rahimahullah would say that لا ينبغي الإقامة بأرض يكون العمل فيها بغير الحق والسب للسلف. That it's not appropriate to live in a place where people are now practicing on something which is in contrast to Quran and Hadith, and they are criticizing the pious predecessors. So this here means, because now you're going to be, especially in those times now, there's no internet, etc. So you're going to be intermingling with these people whose deen contravenes Sharia. What's going to happen is they're going to have an impact on you. If when you go out, when you mix with them, they are criticizing the pious, the previous scholars, then you'll also start to criticize them. So this here is very, very important. If you meet any person, irrespective of what the status he has, but if you meet any person and he's criticizing any of the pious or any of the scholars of the past, then you must know that you can never ever take your deen from that person. I can actually give you examples. I'm referring to something, but it's not appropriate now to mention that. So nevertheless, if anyone criticizes any of the, okay, let me rather say it. If you even have to go to a dars in Medina Munawwara and in Masjid al-Nabawi, and if you hear them criticizing any of the scholars of the past, if they're calling Imam Nawawi rahmallah a fasiq, na'udhu billah, and they're criticizing Ibn Hajar rahmallah, that even though they're teaching in that blessed place, you must know that you can never take your deen from them. The second advice, Alama Mutarrif, he says that Imam Malik rahmallah said, قَلَّمَا كَانَ رَجُلٌ صَادِقٌ لَا يَكْذِبْ فِي حَدِيثِهِ. Now, isn't all of you would want to have your aql, you would want to have your full intellect when you grow old, and you wouldn't want to have any kinds of sicknesses, etc. So Imam Malik is giving you the solution that if you want to enjoy your intellect all your life, and you don't want to be afflicted with any of the difficulties of old age, you don't want dementia, etc., then he says, قَلَّمَا كَانَ رَجُلٌ صَادِقٌ لَا يَكْذِبْ فِي حَدِيثِهِ إِلَّا مُتِّعَ بِعَقْلِهِ وَلَمْ يُصِبْهُ مَعَ الْهَرَمِ آفَةٌ. That he's saying that if a person has to be very honest in his speech, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless him with intellect all his life. He will never ever lose his intellect. The third advice, we spoke yesterday how he did not like any disputes in religion. So he mentions how disputes harden the heart and how it snatches away the nur of ilm. Imam Malik, he says, الجدال في الدين ينشئ المراه ويذهب بنور العلم من القلب ويقسي ويورث الضغن. So this shows that we should not just debate with everybody. You learn a little bit and now you want to debate with everybody. Rather, knowledge demands lots of maturity. And unfortunately, maturity is not the natural outcome of knowledge. So you understand what I'm saying? Maturity is not an outcome of knowledge. You can read thousands of books, but because a person can read thousands of books, but because that person is immature, then he can end up abusing that knowledge. So Imam Malik rahmallah is sharing this wisdom that don't go around and just debating. It's going to make your heart hard, and it's also going to take away all the nur of ilm. So he said, لَيْسَ الْجِدَالُ فِي الدِّينِ بِشَيْءٍ. This is what he once mentioned. And he also said that أَهْلُ الْأَهْوَى بِئْسَ الْقَوْمِ لَا يُسَلَّمَ عَلَيْهِمْ. They are so strong against those who introduce innovation. They don't even make salam with them. وَاعْتِزَالُهُمْ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ. They try to just stay away from them. Instead of going to debate with them, just keep your distance from them. Regarding the importance and virtues, the virtues of seeking knowledge, once he was asked that ma afdalu ma yasna'u al-abd. So isn't now in the month of Ramadan you want to also know what's the best thing you can do? So Imam Malik gives you the answer. He says talabul ilm. Go seek knowledge. That's the best thing you can do. The next advice, Alama Dhahabi rahimahullah, he quotes with his sanad the words that Imam Malik rahimahullah mentioned regarding what type of knowledge you should seek. That he's saying that it's good for you to go and seek knowledge. Now, what kind of knowledge should a person seek? So a person came and asked Imam Malik, "Ma taqulu fi talab al-ilm?" So in that voice note I sent this morning, I told you that Imam Malik, you are so accessible like this, people could come and ask him. So what do you say about seeking knowledge? So you say, حسن جميل لكن انظر الذي يلزمك من حين تصبح إلى أن تمسي فالزمه. That yes, it's definitely good for you to go and learn all the intricacies and all of the details, but don't let that cause you to forget what you need to know from the morning to the evening. Whatever you need to do from the morning to the evening, learn about that and then falzamhu. So if you have a shop, then learn the masail of business. If you, irrespective of what, no matter how you're spending your day, learn the masail regarding that so that you can know how to practice upon the deen. So that's the fifth advice. The sixth advice, Alama ibn Wahab, he quotes, and now this here is advice which Imam Malik rahmallah gives specifically for a student. So we are all students, so therefore listen attentively. He says that حق على من طلب العلم أن يكون له صير ووقار وسكينة وخشية. That you must firstly have good character. It's very important for a student to have good character and be composed, have the sakina, and also wakhashiyah, and also have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thereafter he says, وَالْعِلْمُ حَسَنٌ لِمَنْ رُزِقَ خَيْرُهُ. That ilm is good, but it's good for that person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed with the goodness of ilm. So he says, فَلَا تُمَكِّنِ النَّاسِ مِن نَفْسِكَ. Don't give people an opportunity to attack you. فَإِنَّ مِن سَعَادَةِ الْمَرْءِ أَن يُوَفَّقَ لِلْخَيْرِ. That you're studying, your prosperity is that you are that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you at practicing on what you learn. And وَإِنَّ مِن شَقْوَةِ الْمَرْءِ أَلَّا يَزَالُ يُخْطِئُ. That a person his bad luck, so to say, is that he continuously just makes mistakes. Thereafter he says, وَذِلٌّ وَإِهَانَةٌ لِلْعِلْمِ أَن يَتَكَلَّمَ الرَّجُلُ بِالْعِلْمِ عِندَ مَنْ لَا يُطِيعُهُ. That you are disgracing knowledge. If you know people are not going to obey what you said, if you know people are not even going to listen to what you said, then you don't go there and go mention to them your fatwa. So this here also on social media, this is the place where ilm is abused. That you can see this person, his mindset is he has this mindset. Now you're going to come with 1, 2 responses. There's no way he's going to accept what you say. So don't, Imam Malik is saying, وَذِلٌّ وَإِهَانَةٌ. Don't disgrace him by going to try and present it to him. Likewise, he also gave the following advice, and this is, he gave this advice to his family members who are going to seek knowledge. إِذَا تَعَلَّمْتُمْ عِلْمًا مِنْ طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ فَلْيُرَ عَلَيْكَ أَثَرُ. If you are going out to seek knowledge, then people must be able to see the effects of it on you. They must be able to see the impact of you on you. وَلْيُرَ فِيكَ سِمَتُهُ وَتَعَلَّمْ لِذَلِكَ الْعِلْمَ الَّذِي علمته السكينة والحلم والوقار. So learn knowledge which is going to teach you good character, basically. Thereafter he says, حقا على من طلب العلم أن يكون فيه وقار وسكينة وخشية وأن يكون متبعا. Now look, that you must follow what he's saying. Who must you follow? أن يكون متبعا لآثار من مضى. The greatest muhaddith is telling you, follow those the pious predecessors. So this shows you, he didn't say that follow hadith. Why? Because the pious predecessors, they followed hadith. So when you're following the pious predecessors, then you are through them you are following hadith. Thereafter he says that it's necessary for those who are seeking knowledge that they shouldn't joke a lot. And one important point he mentions, وَبِخَاصَةٍ إِذَا ذَكَرُوا اللَّهِ. That when it's there's a time and place for everything. When it's the time for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or in any deeni matter, then don't joke in those. The next advice which Imam Malik rahimahullah gives, Abu Nu'aym, he quotes some advice that Imam Malik rahimahullah gave to a student, that Imam Malik rahimahullah mentioned to a Qurayshi, يَبْنَ أَخِي تَعَلَّمِ الْأَدَبَ قَبْلَ أَن تَتَعَلَّمْ. That first go and learn akhlaq, that beautify your character, then you can go and learn all the all less in-depth knowledge. But first, the most basic and important thing is first learn adab. So inshallah, is everyone going to make amal on this here? Then the next advice which he gives is with regards to a person who should dedicate himself to seeking knowledge. So he say, لا يصلح. Now this here is from his experience. لا يصلح طلب لمفلس ولا لغنى متكبر. That a person, when he has no money at all, then it's not appropriate for him now to go a bankrupt person. He shouldn't go and seek knowledge. And also a rich person who's very arrogant, he also shouldn't go, that he think he can buy his teacher off with his money, etc. So such a person rather shouldn't waste his time trying to seek knowledge. So he mentions about a poor person. This is a poor person who, because of his poverty, it's going to distract him from seeking knowledge. Because on the other hand, there is that other narration which is mentioned in Hilyatul Awliya, that Imam Malik rahmallah said, لا يبلغ أحد ما يريد من هذا العلم حتى يضربه الفقر. That a person will never get knowledge until he has to taste of poverty. You have to spend all your wealth in trying to get knowledge. وَيُؤْثِرُهُ عَلَى كُلِّ حَاجَةٍ. And then you actually prefer that poverty over your very basic needs. So he also mentioned that. And then he explains about knowledge. He says that لَيْسَ الْعِلْمُ بِكَثْرَةِ الرِّوَايَةِ وَإِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ نُورٌ يَضَعَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الْقُلُوبِ. That knowledge is not just going and quoting lots of quotations and narrations, but rather knowledge is a light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in a person's heart. So Qadi Iyad rahimahullah, he says that this here is actually transmitted from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu also. And then he said that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, he said that al-ilmu nurun la ya'nasu illa biqalbin taqiyyin khashi'in. That if you want this nur, One is you just read it and listen to lectures, that you will get information. But if you want this nur, then you'll get it with the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you'll get it by practicing on what you learn. And also we explained yesterday, one way of getting this nur is by having all this adab for ilm, etc., and respecting the durus. And we mentioned that how to be in the state of wudu and sit in the tashahud posture, etc. Then as for his advice on how to conduct yourself after you qualify, so you went and you go seek knowledge, now you're qualified, now how should you conduct yourself? So he said, min adab al-alim alla yadhaka illa tabassuman. Don't go out there and laugh loudly, rather you just smile. Because if you have to be laughing loudly, then it makes you lose your ru'b, it makes you lose your integrity. Then Imam Malik rahmallah now also mentions about a person who makes his own interpretations of the Quran. So see the order that we're mentioning it. Now you finish qualify. So now you think that mashallah, I learned so much. Now let me, the meaning of this verse is this. So you start to now give the interpretation of the Quran on your own. So Imam Zahabi rahmallah, he quotes with his sanad that Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said, لو أن لي سلطانا على من يفسر القرآن لضربت رأسه. That if I had any power or any authority on a person who interprets the Quran on his own, I would have slapped his head, I would have hit his head. And he says that قلت يعني تفسيره بالرأي, that if a person is to go around giving his own interpretations of the Quran. Now you finish seeking knowledge, now you need wisdom. So now how do you get wisdom? So Imam Malik rahimahullah explains to you how to get wisdom. He says that ما زهد أحد في الدنيا واتقى إلا نطق بالحكمة. That a person, the more you abstain from this world and the more pious you become, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with wisdom. Now, mashallah, this alim, he qualified, he accomplished so much in his life. So now he wants to praise himself. So Imam Malik rahmallah said, Inna rajul idha dhahaba yamdahu nafsahu dhahaba baha'uhu. That when a person wants to go, he's praising himself. Now, what's the objective? Why would a person praise himself to say that, mashallah, I accomplished this in my life? He is doing it so that he can get respect and honor. But Imam Malik is saying that when you praise yourself, your honor and your respect actually diminishes. Now people will say that he's blowing his own trumpet. So now you finish qualifying, now you need to also abstain from this world. So now how do you abstain from this world? So Imam Malik explains to you. He's saying that az-zuhdu fi din tibul maksab wa qasr al-amal. That you have a good source of income and then have short hopes. Don't say that now I want to save up for this and I need to save up for my retirement. You don't even know if you're going to live till then. And by my December holiday now, you're already planning a foreign trip, or you want to build this very beautiful home. So don't have all that kind of hopes. Then Imam Malik rahimahullah explains what you need for this world. He's saying that if you want to enjoy this world, all you need to travel through this world is ad-dunya sihhatul badan wa tibun nafs min an-na'im. That's all you need. That you need to be very healthy and be content with everything else that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed you with. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed you with little, with 1 meal a day, be content with it. That's enough. If Allah ta'ala blessed you, so be content and be healthy. That's enough that you need of this world. In another place, he also explains that بُغْيَتُكَ مِنْهَا مَا يَكْفِيكَ, that the amount you should seek of this world is what's going to be sufficient for you. فَأَقَلَّ عَيْشَهَا بُغْيَتُكَ. So you just need to seek what will at least let you cover your necessities. وَمَا قَلَّ وَكَفَى خَيْرٌ مِمَّا أَكْثَرَ وَأَلْهَى. So this here is from the hadith, he quotes it. But now Imam Malik rahmallah would wear all this expensive and elegant garments. So now, obviously, this objection comes about that he's mentioning that you should only you should abstain from this world. So then he explains. He says, "At-tawadu'u fi at-tuqa wad-din wa laysa fi al-libas." That humility is actually in piety and in faith, not in dress. That now you're wearing a dress and you're putting patches there just so that people can say, "Mashallah, look, this person is following the sunnah to such an extent." So here you're wearing so simple, but you're defeating the whole objective. So it all depends on having proper humility. Then with regards to the importance of looking after one's tongue, Imam Malik rahmallah said, لا يستكمل الرجل إيمان حتى يحرز لسانه. A person, he will never have complete iman until he guards his tongue. And then you remember yesterday we said that he would not involve himself in that which had no benefit. So he would also then advise others the same. He say, لا يصلح الرجل حتى يترك ما لا يعنيه. فإذا كان كذلك أوشك أن يفتح الله في قلبه. So if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open your heart, then to put it very frankly, mind your own business. Don't concern yourself in that which does not concern you. One last advice is that he quotes some advices from others. So he says that Luqman alayhi salam, he told his son. Now, you know, if I say alayhi salam, now just now I get objections. So rather I say Luqman, I just say Luqman. So he says that Ya bunayya laysa aghna kasihatin, that having lots of wealth cannot equal to having good health. Person can have lots of wealth, but if he every night has to take an injection and he's on chronic medication and he's suffering, then what's the benefit of all that wealth? And wala na'imin katib enough. And likewise, there is no bounty, it's just being content. That, you know, contentment is in the heart. So these are 21 advices of Imam Malik rahimahullah. I hope you jotted them down. Actually, if you're making notes, I humbly request that you send me your notes so that at least I can get a little bit motivation. You know, just that I can see how many of you are really interested. Because when you conduct a lesson in person, then you can see the interest. You can even gauge from the body language whether that person is really interested. But now this is online, so I have no idea whether you are even listening, let alone paying attention, because any of you can just log in and then go and do some other work. So if you are making notes, then please send me your notes. In all honesty, I won't even get a chance to read your notes, but at least it can serve as a motivation. I can see that you're appreciating the lesson. Because you see, actually, I'm of the assumption that if lessons are conducted for free, then they are not appreciated. And that is why we also put a charge on those who attend live the Muwatta, even though it's such a minimal $60 for 2 years of lessons, and then you must know PayPal, they deduct their fees, etc. But it's just that PayPal, once there's payment, then there is dedication. So if there's no payment, if you stop listening from tomorrow, then there's no harm for you. Or if you decide you want to leave the cause, then there's nothing for you to lose. So prove me wrong. Show me that even though with no payment, you can still paying so much attention. And in that way, inshallah, it will also become a means for me then to volunteer more time with siblings of ilm and to conduct more free lessons. There's so many different ideas which I have on conducting one. I wanted to conduct a free lesson on all the books of the Hanafi madhab from Imam Abu Hanifa downwards. I thought it would be very beneficial for ulama that at least firstly, imagine if you studied Ifta, and if someone asks you which are the main books of the madhab and you don't even know if they printed or not. So learning the books of the madhab and understanding the authority of the author. So if he mentions anything in his book, what status does it hold? That, you know, if one author has to write something, it holds a lot of status. You can actually give a fatwa on that view. So all of that. So prove me that you dedicated, and inshallah, I'll then volunteer to do all those kind of courses, or maybe even Hanafi usul of hadith or something like that. Nevertheless, now inshallah we can discuss the books of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, he authored a few other books. Qadi Iyad rahimahullah, he said, اعلموا وفقكم الله اعلموا وفقكم الله تعالى أن لمالك رحمه الله تعالى أوضاعا شريفة مروية عنه أكثرها بأسانيد صحيحة في غير فن من العلم. So he says that Imam Malik rahimahullah, there are many noteworthy compilations which are attributed to him, and many of them are also transmitted with asanid, with authentic asanid. And he's saying, but maybe لكنه لم يشتهر عنه منها ولا واظب على إسماعه وروايته غير الموطأ. So these books didn't become popular, and also Imam Malik rahimahullah, he did not continue teaching these books. So therefore, they are not so popular. So there are 12 books that are attributed to Imam Malik rahimahullah. Some are inaccurately attributed to him. So first, let us go through those 12. Let us go through those books that are inaccurately attributed to Imam Malik. So it is claimed that Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote a letter to the ruler Harun al-Rashid. So this a letter then took the form of a book. Qadi Iyad, he says, ومن ذلك رسالته إلى هارون الرشيد المشهورة في الآداب والمواعظ حدث بها بالأندلس أولا ابن حبيب عن رجاله عن مالك. So he says that a letter which Imam Malik rahimahullah is a very famous letter. It's regarding etiquettes and advisors. Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote this here, and Ibn Habib, he was the first to narrate this letter from Imam Malik rahimahullah. So Qadi Iyad, he presents the asanid, and then he quotes scholars who mentioned that this letter or this book is actually falsely attributed to Imam Malik rahimahullah. It's a fabrication because the chains are weak. So he says that Qalabu Abdullah ibn Atab, that هذا الإسناد وهم and ولا شك في سقوط رجل محدث منه, there's missing narrator, وقد أنكرها بعض مشايخنا. So all the senior Malikis, they also denied that Imam Malik. So he quotes the names Ismail al-Qadi and Abu Huri and Abu Muhammad ibn Abu Zayd, and they all said إنها لا تصح. And Abu Huri, he says that there are āḥadīth which are written in there which are munkara tukhalifu usul, they go against the very usul of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So Imam Malik, we spoke of how specific he was to only narrate authentic narrations, but you find baseless reports in there in this letter. So that is sufficient to show that this is baseless. And he says that وَأَشْيَاء فِيهَا لَا تُعْرَفْ مِنْ مَذْهَبِ مَالِكٍ وَرَأْيِهِ. There are also things which are written in this letter which is not actually from the madhab of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So Asbagh, he then said, he took an oath and he said, مَا هِيَ مِنْ وَضْعِ Malik. Alama Zahabi rahimahullah, he comments on this here and he says that وَرِسَالَةُ آدَابِ الرَّشِيدِ إِسْنَادُهَا مُنْقَطِعٌ, that the center of it is munqati', and Imam Zahabi rahimahullah said هذه الرسالة موضوعة, this is a fabrication. And he says, he quotes from Qadi Abu Huri, فيها أحاديث لو سمع مالك من يحدث بها لأدبه. If Imam Malik rahimahullah to hear anyone narrating that, he would have disciplined him. So leave alone not narrating it himself, Imam Malik would not even tolerated anyone to transmit those narrations. So this is the first book that is falsely attributed to Imam Malik rahimahullah. The second book which is incorrectly attributed to Imam Malik is a tafsir. So Imam Suyuti rahimahullah, he assumed that Imam Malik rahimahullah probably wrote a tafsir. He says, ثم رأيت له تفسيرا لطيفا مسندا فيحتمل أن يكون من تأليفه. That's why I say probably, because وأن يكون علق عليه, that he's saying that it's possible that it could be written by him, or that he commented at least on this tafsir. However, the truth is that this here was written by a different person. Imām Zahabi rahimahullah, he says, وقد صنف مكي القيس كتابا فيما روى عن مالك في التفسير ومعاني القرآن. That Makki Qaysi, he is the one who wrote this. So this is Makki ibn Abi Talib al-Qaysi al-Qayrawani. He passed away in the year 437 Hijri. And Imam Malik, what we said, he passed away in 179 Hijri. So that means this was written more than 2.5 centuries after Imam Malik's demise. So it's obviously it can't be from Imam Malik rahimahullah. Then the third book which is incorrectly attributed to Imam Malik is Kitabul Manasik. Allama Suyuti rahimahullah, he speaks about a book that Imam Malik wrote on Manasik. He says, أن أكبر كتبه كتاب المناسك. That he's saying that the greatest book, the biggest book that Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote is this Manasik. إلا أنه لم يشتهر له شيء غير الموطأ. But it didn't become as popular as the Muwatta. But there is no proof that Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote a book on this topic. So those are 3 books that are incorrectly attributed to Imam Malik rahimahullah. Then there are books which are doubtful. So it's possible that Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote them, and it's possible that he did not write them. So now what do we mean? Why do we say that they are doubtful? Because there are no chains of transmission. There's no asanid to prove that Imam Malik rahimahullah did indeed write them. However, very early scholars and very senior Maliki scholars, they attributed these books to Imam Malik. So although there's no sanad, but these scholars, they were so close to the time of Imam Malik, and they knew so much of Imam Malik, and they attributed these books to Imam Malik rahimahullah. So therefore, we put them in a category of being doubtful. So the first is a book that gathers 70,000 verdicts and answers of Imam Malik rahimahullah. قاضي عياض, he says, وذكر الخطيب أبو بكر في تاريخه الكبير عن أبي العباس السراج النيزابوري أنه قال هذه 70,000 مسألة لمالك. These were 70,000 verdicts of Imam Malik, and thereafter he pointed to a stack of books. And then Qadi Iyaz rahimahullah, he says that these are actually the answers that Imam Malik rahimahullah gave to his students. So this here, it might not be written directly by Imam Malik, but the fact that it's derived from what he said, that is how you can attribute it to him. You know, this is another whole topic on its own, whether you can attribute the notes which a student make to the teacher and then say that it's his book. So the French philosopher and historian Michel Foucault wrote in his book that what is an author. So he wrote this book, What is an Author? And in this book, he mentions the third point concerning this author function is that it is not formed spontaneously through the simple attribution of a discourse to an individual. It results from a complex operation whose purpose is to construct the rational entity we call an author. Undoubtedly, this construction is assigned a realistic dimension as we speak of an individual's profundity or creative power, his intentions, or the original inspiration manifested in writing. Nevertheless, these aspects of an individual, which we designate as an author, which comprise an individual as an author, are projections in terms always more or less psychological of our way of handling text. In the comparisons we make, the traits we extract as pertinent, the continuities we basically mentions about this, that in the past, this is the student reads or makes notes from what the person is saying, and then you attribute the book to the teacher. So instead of quoting this long passages, that's basically what it means, that in the past, this is what would happen. It was very frequent in the past that they would do this here. So that is how it's being attributed to Imam Malik. Imam Malik did not actually sit himself and write it. So that's the first book which is doubtful. The second book is a book which is called Kitab al-Sir. وقد نسب إلى مالك أيضا كتاب يسمى كتاب السر من رواية ابن القاسم, that he had the secret book. Now look, Imam Qadi Iyad, he's quoting an entire sanad for this book. He says, حدثنا بالإجازة أبو محمد بن عتاب عن أبي عمر بن الحذاء عن أبيه عن أبو عبد الله بن عن أبي عبد الله عن أبيه أبو عبد الله عن أبي القاسم الحسين بن عبد الله بن أحمد العثماني عن محمد بن عبد العزيز بن الوزير. So he's mentioning the whole sanad here and quoting it. He quotes from Ibn al-Qasim, who quotes it from Imam Malik rahimahullah. But in spite of mentioning his sanad, there is proof that even Qadi Iyaz had doubt, because look at how he's saying. He's saying وَقَدْ نُسِبَ إِلَى Malik. So this here shows that he wasn't really convinced that this here is definitely a book of Imam Malik. He's saying it's attributed to Imam Malik rahimahullah. So Allama Qurtubi rahimahullah, in his tafsir, he mentions that the seniors within the Maliki madhab, they mention that Imam Malik rahimahullah could not have written this book. He says that this year has been transmitted that Imam Malik wrote a book, Kitab Sir, وحذاق أصحاب مالك ومشايخهم ينكرون ذلك الكتاب. The very seniors within the Maliki madhab, even the companions of Imam Malik, they deny that he could have written a book like this. ومالك أجل من أن يكون له كتاب سر. Imam Malik is not going to have this private kind of a book, a kitab sir, a secret book. So these are two doubtful books, but there are greater chances that Imam Malik rahimahullah did not write these two books. So that's for 5 books. And then you have books which are correctly ascribed to Imam Malik rahimahullah. So the one is his letter to Ibn Wahab, that his letter to his student. Qadi Iyaz, he says, فَمِنْ أَشْهَرِهَا رِسَالَتُهُ إِلَى ابْنِ وَهْبٍ. So this here also shows the why we write letters to students. You can learn it from Imam Malik rahimahullah. That he wrote this here on Qadar and والرد على القدرية وهو من خيار الكتب في هذا الباب الدالة على سعة علمه بهذا الشأن رحمه الله. And then after he says وقد حدثنا بها غير واحد من شيوخنا بأسانيدهم المتصلة إلى مالك رحمه الله تعالى. So lots of his mashayikh, they narrated it what they assigned it to Imam Malik rahimahullah. Alama Zahabi rahimahullah, he comments on the status of one of the chains. He says وَإِسْنَادُهَا صحيح. So this is correctly attributed to Imam Malik. Definitely he did write this letter to Ibn Wahab. Then Imam Malik rahimahullah also wrote a book on astronomy and mathematics. ومنها كتاب في النجوم وحساب مدار الزمان ومنازل القمر وهو كتاب جيد مفيد جدا قد اعتمد الناس عليه في هذا الباب وجعلوه أصلا, made a textbook in this field. He wrote this book on astronomy and mathematics, calculating the orbit of time and the phases of the moon. So you can see our ulama, they had knowledge of this. They were in the forefront of the sciences. Their books became the textbooks.
Thereafter, another book is that he wrote a book which was on judicial rulings. ومن ذلك رسالة مالك في الأقضية كتب بها إلى بعض القضاة. He wrote this here to some judges, and عشرة أجزاء, in 10 volumes. Another book is the letter that he wrote to Abu Ghassan. So you can see it was a very frequent thing to write letters, and that is why you should get in this habit, even though you can send voice notes, etc. But important things, you should write it down. So this is the fourth. So I hope you are writing down all of this. Like I said earlier, I'll appreciate it if you send me your notes, or at the very least, at least inform me that you are diligently following and you're paying and you're concentrating and you're following this as proper durus. Inshallah, it will be a very great motivation for me. So he wrote this letter to Abu Ghassan. ومن ذلك رسالته إلى أبي غسان محمد بن مطرف الفتوى وهي مشهورة يرويها عنه خالد بن النزار ومحمد بن مطرف وهو من كبار أهل المدينة قرينا لمالك. Then the fifth is a letter that Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote to Layth. وأما رسالته إلى الليث في إجماع أهل المدينة فقد رويناه أيضا وذكرناها أول الكتاب بنصها لأنها صغيرة. So Qadi Iyaz, he mentions that about this letter that Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote to Layth. Now this here is a famous letter. It's also published. So Imam Malik rahimahullah is admonishing Imam Layth. And Imam Layth ibn Sa'ad, he also responded to it. Alama ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he relates the response in I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in. He quotes, he says, وقال الحافظ أبو يوسف يعقوب بن سفيان الفسوي في كتاب التاريخ والمعرفة له وهو كتاب جليل غزير العلم جم الفوائد. حدثني يحيى بن عبد الله بن بكير المخزومي قال هذه رسالة الليث بن سعد إلى مالك بن أنس. So this year, I always like to quote this letter, you know, the letters when they were writing, especially when it was concerning differences of opinion, just to show you the humility and the amount of respect that they would have. Remember, Imam Malik is admonishing him. And on the other hand, Layth ibn Sa'ad is a mujtahid. He has his own school of thought. He has his own methodology. So it's like completely different from the methodology of Imam Malik rahimahullah. And we know the bitterness between contemporaries. So for lack of a better word, we can say that a rival is writing to Layth ibn Sa'ad and is actually criticizing him and is telling him that you're issuing incorrect verdicts. So Imam Layth is writing a clarification. But now look at how he writes the clarification. He doesn't respond by writing a bitter letter or harsh rebuttal. Who you think you are wrong. Let me show your mistakes. He doesn't do. He just says, Salamun alayka fa inni ahmadu ilayka Allah alladhi la ilaha illa hu. Amma ba'd. عافانا الله وإياك. Start off with dua. عافانا الله وإياك وأحسن لنا العاقبة في الدنيا والآخرة. قد بلغني كتابك تذكر فيه من صلاح حالكم الذي يسرني. I was very happy to hear that you are in good health. وأدام الله ذلك لكم وأتمه بالعون على شكره والزيادة من إحسانه. وذكرت نذرك في الكتب التي بعثت بها إليك وإقامتك وإياها وختمك عليها بخاتمك وقد أتتنا فجزاك الله عما قدمت منها خيرا فإنها كتب انتهت إلينا عنك فأحببت أن أبلغ حقيقتها بنظرك. So now he starts to give the clarification. So look how he first worded it before that with the du'as, etc. So if you want to learn etiquette, you must always read this kind of letters that were exchanged between different scholars. They also had these views. According to Imam Malik, the opinion of Imam Layth is that the salah is not valid. So you know that today that ulama is saying that no, the salah is not valid. So how can we speak good about them? We criticize them. But it was the exact same thing that Imam Malik holds a different opinion. Layth ibn Sa'ad holds a different opinion. Then there was also a book which Imam Malik rahimahullah wrote on the difficult words of the Quran. So Qadi Iyaz, he says, وَمِنْ ذَلِكَ كِتَابُهُ فِي التَّفْسِيرِ لِغَرِيبِ الْقُرْآنِ. And then he mentions his whole sanad for that book. And then the other is that the Muwaṭṭa, and this is the greatest and the most popular book. Now, I was hoping to discuss this book today, but it's already almost time up. But nevertheless, let's see, inshallah, how it goes, how much we can discuss. Like I said, it's all based on your interest, inshallah. So Ibn Wahab also then wrote, so then there are books which are based on Imam Malik rahimahullah's teachings. So Ibn Wahab, he wrote down all that he heard from Imam Malik rahimahullah. Allama Suyuti rahimahullah says, وَرَأَيْتُ لِبْنِ وَهَبْ كِتَابْ الْمَجَالِسِ عَنْ مَالِكِ فِيهِ مَا سَمِعَ مِنْ مَالِكِ فِي مَجَالِسِهِ. He made notes. So I told you to make notes, and here you can see this the dalil for it. And besides this, there are many other verdicts and benefits and rulings and statements of Imam Malik rahimahullah that his students quoted from him. فأما ما نقل عنه كبار أصحابه من المسائل والفتاوى والفوائد فشيء كثير ومن كنوز ذلك المدونة والواضحة وأشياء. So I think let's just start with discussing the Muwatta. Like I said yesterday, if we don't discuss it, then it means we're not going to discuss it. It's not like a formal madrasa that way. If you don't discuss it today, okay, we'll discuss it tomorrow. We only have this month of Ramadan. So if you don't, so as much as we can discuss, so inshallah, a little bit about the Muwatta we'll talk. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he gives an overview of hadith before Imam Malik rahimahullah. And from there, you can gather where the Muwatta fits in. And since all of you have already studied Mishkat, most of you also studied the Sahih Sitta, so you already know that how the Prophet ﷺ, he first gave the general prohibition of writing, but then after he permitted some individuals, so there's no need for me to go into all of those details. MashaAllah, ya Satida, I've already explained all of that in much detail. So here we can just now suffice with what Ibn Hajar rahimahullah wrote. So in Huda Sari, and this here is the correct name of the introduction of Fathul Bari, it's not Hajj Sari, it's Huda Sari. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah wrote there, اعلم علمني الله وإياك أن آثار النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لم تكن في عصر أصحابه وكبار تابعيهم مدونة في الجوامع ولا مرتبة لأمرين, two reasons. أحدهما إنهم كانوا في ابتداء الحال قد نهوا عن ذلك كما ثبت في صحيح مسلم خشية أن يختلط بعض ذلك بالقرآن العظيم, وثانيها لسعة حفظهم وسيلان أذهانهم ولأن أكثرهم كانوا لا يعرفون الكتابة, ثم حدث في أواخر عصر التابعين تدوين الآثار. So āḥadīth started to be written formally towards the end of the generation of the tabi'in. وتبويب الأخبار لما انتشر العلماء في الأمصار وكثر الابتداع من الخوارج والروافض ومنكر الأقدار. This was the reason that now you have many people who are astray. فأول من جمع ذلك الربيع بن الصبيح. He says that the very first person to write was Rabi' ibn Sabih. So now he's mentioning that Rabi' ibn Sabih was the very first person to write, but there were many muhaddithin who regarded him to be slightly weak. So this is just from a historical perspective that he was the first person to write, because he was actually dedicated himself more to ibadah. Like Ibn Hibban rahimahullah, he said, وَكَانَ مِنْ عُبَّادِ أَهْلِ الْبَصْرَةِ وَزُهَادِهِمْ وَكَانَ يشبه بيته بالليل ببيت النخل من كثرة التهجد. So lots of tahajjud was performed. إلا أن الحديث لم يكن من صناعته. So this also shows that a person can be extremely pious, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that he narrates is authentic, and you can just quote it because the Sheikh quoted it, so therefore you can attribute it to the Prophet ﷺ. So there's actually a whole article which we're planning on writing, but not getting down to it. You know, there's no barakah in our time. Make dua, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can grant us the opportunity of finishing that article, that just to show that how if a pious person narrates something and attributes it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it does not necessarily mean that it is a authentic narration. So nevertheless, then Hafiz ibn Hajar continues and he says, وَسَعِيرُ ibn Abi Aruba وغيرهما وكانوا يصنفون كل باب على حدة إلى أن قام كبار أهل الطبقة الثالثة فدونوا الأحكام. So he says that these scholars wrote, then a next tabaqa came, and they now started to write ahkam. فصنف الإمام مالك الموطأ. So now he's mentioning that Imam Malik was in the third tabaqa. وتوقع فيه الفتاوى من حديث أهل الحجاز ومزجه بأقوال الصحابة وفتاوى التابعين ومن بعدهم. And then he quotes many other names. وصنف أبو محمد عبد الملك بن عبد العزيز بن جريج بمكة وأبو عمر وعبد الرحمن بن عمر والأوزاعي بالشام وأبو عبد الله سفيان بن سعيد الثوري بالكوفة وأبو سلمة. So he quotes all of these names. Now from this whole list, it's impossible to know exactly who started and who was the very first to write. Why? Because no dates are given. So they all lived in the same time, and even maybe a scholar could have passed away earlier, but it's probably that the other scholar, he started to write earlier, and maybe this scholar was writing towards the end of his life. So therefore we can never be sure on who was exactly the first person to write. If you claim that someone was the first person to write a hadith, then it's mere conjecture and guesswork. It cannot be true because we don't know in which year they write. Allama Baqa'i rahimahullah in Nukatul Wafiyya, he tried to pinpoint one scholar and mention that he was the first, and he said that Hassan Basri. So he says, وَرَأَيْتُ فِي التَّرْجُمَةِ الْحَلَّاجِ مِنْ تَارِيخِ الْخَطِيبِ أن القاضي أبا عمر المالكي توقف في أمره حتى قرئ في كتاب له أمر رتبه وجعله قائما مقام الحج. So basically, Allama Khatib narrates this one very fascinating report in Tariq Baghdad. It's in volume 8 on page 138. That this person is mentioning that it's mentioned that if you can't go for Hajj, then what you should do. So now look at how like what a big fairy tale this here is. He's saying if you can't go for Hajj, then what you need to do أن الإنسان إذا أراد الحج ولم يمكنه أفرد في داره بيتا لا يلحقه شيء من النجاسة ولا يدخله أحد. That you make sure that no one must come in this one room. You dedicate one room in your house if you can't go for Hajj, and you dedicate this one room. ومنع من تطرقه فإذا حضرت أيام الحج طاف حوله طوافه حول البيت. When the days of Hajj come, now you make sure you make the tawaf of the room of your house. فإذا انقضى ذلك وقضى من المناسك ما يقضي بمكة مثله جمع 30 يتيما وعمل لهم أمرا ما يمكنه من الطعام وأحضرهم إلى ذلك البيت وقدم. He's mentioning all of this, and then after that Imam Malik, Imam Hassan Basri rahmallah wrote his Kitab al-Ikhlas. So he's mentioning that this year was the first book that was written in response to that. So this book of Hassan Basri, it is published. However, it's a very basic collection, and therefore it cannot be considered as gathering the Sunnah. Sheikh Muhammad Awami mentions this, that you cannot consider it that when they're talking about who was the first to gather the Sunnah and make dua for Sheikh Awama, he's currently in hospital. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him complete shifa. So, because then you can also compare that with the suhuf that were written before. Now, although in this list, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he mentions that Rabi' was the first, but he was from Basra. And the documentation of hadith actually started in Medina. So in his introduction to Ta'liq al-Mumajjad, Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda rahimahullah, he says, وَكَانَ تَدْوِينُهَا فِي الْمَدِينَةِ الْمُنَوَّرَةِ قَبْلَ كُلِّ الْأَمْصَارِ فألف فيها الإمام محمد بن شهاب الزهري المدني. We spoke about him in the year 124, and then Musa ibn Uqba al-Madani. So all of these, so he says وألف في زمن هؤلاء وبعدهم غيرهم من أئمة الحديث والسنة في مكة المكرمة والكوفة. But the main thing is that it started ولكن السبق الأول في تدوين السنة كان لعلماء المدينة الأعلام. So he's mentioning that it was the scholars of Medina who wrote. So Allama Rama Urmuzi rahimahullah and Allama Khatib rahimahullah, they both discussed this in detail. And if you're interested, our time is running out, so you can refer to their respective books and you can get more detail there. And then, you know, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he also made some arrangements for the writing. And you done in Sahih al-Bukhari, Imam Bukhari brought the chapter باب كيف يقبض العلم. وكتب عمر بن عبد العزيز إلى أبي بكر بن حزم انظر ما كان من حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فاكتبه فإني خفت دروس العلم وذهاب العلماء. So this Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he also issued the command to Abu Bakr ibn Hazm that he should gather the āḥadīth and he should write it. So there were books before Imam Malik rahimahullah, we cannot deny that. However, Imam Malik rahimahullah was the first to gather āḥadīth and put them now in this whole systematic sequence according to the chapters of fiqh, etc. So the Muwaṭṭa is the first to be written in this specific way. Now, what's the reason that Imam Malik rahimahullah started to write the Muwaṭṭa? So when you combine all the reports, then you develop the idea that Imam Malik rahimahullah, he initially acquired this idea of gathering āḥadīth related to fiqh when he was still very young. So Qadi Iyaz, he narrates, قال غيره أول من عمل الموطأ عبد العزيز ibn al-Majishun. That Abdul Aziz ibn al-Majishun, who passed away in 164 Hijri, he was the very first to write a Muwaṭṭa. But he only he wrote all the masail of fiqh and he didn't bring any proofs. So فلما رآه مالك قال ما أحسن ما عمله ولو كنت أنا لبدأت بالآثار. That mashallah, he done a very noble work, but if it would be me, I would have first mentioned our proof. I would mention the hadith. ثم شددت ذلك بالكلام. So thereafter قاضي Iyaz quote that ثم عزم على تصنيف الموطأ. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, he saw this and this gave him the idea. So remember this point. That Imam Malik, when he was still very young, he saw the Muwaṭṭa of someone else, but he did not have any āḥadīth. Basically, he just had the masail. So Imam Malik then decided that, okay, he's going to write the āḥadīth to back up those masail. In this way, he comments on a small scale. The words of Allama Kawthari, فَبَدَأَ يُمَهِّدُ السَّبِيلَ لِذَلِكَ. So this year started to pave the way for the writing of the Muwaṭṭa. And then the leader of the time, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, he wanted a standard book of hadith to be written. So he was probably unaware that Imam Malik was already privately writing in his personal capacity on a small scale. So therefore he advised Imam Malik rahimahullah to write a book. Now there are lots of different reports in Al-Intiqa, Tartib al-Madarik. وروى أبو مصعب أن أبا جعفر قال لمالك ضع للناس كتابا أحملهم عليه فكلمه مالك في ذلك فقال ضعه فما أحد أعلم منك. So he's telling him to go and write a kitab, and I will also compel people to follow this kitab. He's telling him, please, that you must write because I don't know anyone who is more knowledgeable than you. فوضع الموطأ. So then this year made Imam Malik rahmallah, then he got the idea of writing the Muwatta. So here from this you can see that Imam Malik rahmallah is being told by the ruler. So this year was a great encouragement for Imam Malik rahimahullah. فعلما كوثري says فتقوت عزيمة مالك حتى تجرد لجمع الصفوة من الأحاديث والآثار المروية عند أهل المدينة. So first he was writing it on a small scale, like when he get time, like I told you that we're writing that article of when pious people quote. So Imam Malik was probably writing like that, just here and there when he gets time. But now after the leader told him, now he started to officially start to write. وَلِجَمْعِ الْعَمَلِ الْمُتَوَارِث بَيْنَهُمْ مُقْتَصِرًا فِي الرِّوَايَةِ عَلَى شُيُوخِ أَهْلِ الْمَدِينَةِ. So these narrations speak about the leader telling Imam Malik to commence to write. Like I said, there's so many other reports, I don't want to quote them, it's getting late. Then there is another narration which mentions that Abu Ja'far, he summoned Imam Malik during Hajj and he spoke about the book. So speaking about the book, it now means that the book is already being written. So وما ذكر محمد بن عمر, so I mentioned this here what is changed. لما حج Abu Ja'far, again Imam Malik is relating it. I told you yesterday, Imam Malik he narrated lots of his experiences, etc. So لما حج أبو جعفر المنصور دعاني فدخلت عليه فحادثته وسألني فأجبته فقال إني عزمت أن آمر بكتبك هذه. So he's telling him that that this book which so you can see he's using the اسم الإشارة هذه التي قد وضعت, referring to the Muwatta. فتنسخ نسخا. So here he's talking about the Muwatta. That means they already started to compile. But then Qadi Iyaz, he mentions that the Muwatta was not complete even after Abu Ja'far passed away. So he says, فَوَضَعَ الْمُوَطَّةَ فَلَمْ يَفْرُغْ مِنْهُ حَتَّى مَاتَ أبو جعفر. Abu Ja'far passed away and Imam Malik did not conclude with the Muwatta. So that would mean that the Muwatta was not yet completed by the year 158 Hijri, because Imam Malik rahimahullah, because Abu Ja'far, he passed away in the year 158 Hijri. But already before that, there were students of Imam Malik who were transmitting the Muwatta. So, for example, Ali ibn Ziyad, he transmitted the Muwatta before the year 150. We'll probably discuss all about that tomorrow, inshallah. So, Imam Malik basically was writing it in a very gradual way, and we'll explain about that. So, this was one leader who spoke to Imam Malik rahimahullah about writing the Muwatta. So, what we discussed thus far, that Imam Malik got the inspiration, he got the idea when he was still very young. Then he started on a small scale, then a leader told him to do it. Then there are other narrations which suggest that the next leader, he put forth the same request. So Allama ibn Abdul Barr, he relates with his sanad to Ibrahim ibn Hamad al-Zuhri that he mentions about him. So in the sanad, remember that there is a person, Muhammad ibn Jarir. So Ibn Abdul Barr is quoting, حدثنا أحمد بن محمد قال أخبرنا أحمد بن الفضل قال حدثنا محمد بن جرير. So remember his name, Muhammad ibn Jarir. And then the sanad continues that Imam Malik rahimahullah said, قال لي المهدي. Mahdi, the next Khalifa, he told me, يا أبا عبد الله ضع لي كتابا أحمل الأمة عليه. So then Imam Malik he, provided his excuse to saying that we can't force everyone to follow one book of mine. So there, it's the next ruler who is telling Imam Malik. But now we're saying that Imam Malik already started to narrate it also. There are students narrating from him. So there are two possibilities. It's possible that the next leader, he also requested the same. Maybe he didn't have any knowledge of the previous leader. That the previous leader also told Imam Malik. So maybe he gave the same request. But this seems very far-fetched. Then the second possibility is that the narrators here, they're quoting the leader's name incorrectly. So they are referring to the request of the first Khalif. But instead of saying Abu Ja'far, they mentioned the name Mahdi. And this is strengthened by what Allama ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah's quote from after quoting this. He says, قال أبو جعفر محمد بن جرير هكذا حدثني به العباس بن الوليد. So remember, I told you to remember the name Muhammad ibn Jarir. So he's mentioning هكذا حدثني به العباس بن الوليد عن إبراهيم بن حماد وأما محمد بن عمر وأما محمد بن عمر فذكر هذه القصة عن مالك على خلاف ذلك. And then he quotes the whole sanad and he quotes that it's actually لما حج أبو جعفر المنصور. So it's actually Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. So in short, Imam Malik rahimahullah, he first acquired the idea from another person who wrote, and thereafter he was prompted by one Abbasi ruler. The second reason that's given here, this seems to be more correct. Now, with regards to the commencement date and the duration, the four things we have gathered thus far, that he started to write very early in his life. He took inspiration. Then the ruler requested. Then during one of those pilgrimage, Abu Ja'far also spoke about that book. And when Abu Ja'far passed away, the book was not fully prepared. So Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, rahimahullah, he writes that now there's discussion here about Abu Ja'far when he went for Hajj. So he researched to find in which years did Abu Ja'far perform Hajj. وقد استقرأت حجات أبي جعفر بعد خلافته. I studied all the Hajj of Abu Ja'far after he became a Khalifa. And I found that there were 5 times when he went for Hajj. In the year 140 Hijri, in the year 144 Hijri, in the year 147 Hijri, in the year 152 Hijri, and in the year 158 Hijri. And he passed away in Mecca in 158 Hijri. So it could be in any one of these Hajj that he told Imam Malik rahimahullah to write. Now, if we ignore the fact that Imam Malik got this initial idea from Abdul Aziz al-Majishun's book, maybe let's assume that he didn't as yet start to write. Then let's assume also that he got this idea the very first time when Abu Ja'far went for Hajj. That's the time that he told him about it. Then we take into consideration that Imam Malik passed away in the year 179 Hijri. So it will mean that Imam Malik spent about 38 to 39 years writing this book. Now, you know, in Arabic, the Arabs, they generally like to round off amounts like this. So therefore, you have a narration which mentions that Imam Malik dedicated 40 years of his life to this book. So basically, you're rounding off 38 and 39 to 40. So Ibn Abdul Barr, rahimahullah, he mentions what his sanad, and he sanad that عرضنا على مالك الموطأ إلى 40 يوما. That Umar ibn Abdul Wahid, he says that we read the Muwatta to Imam Malik in 40 days. And Imam Malik rahimahullah then said, كتاب ألفته في 40 سنة أخذتموه في 40 يوما. That this book, it took me 40 years to write, and you just read it in 40 days. Then he said, قلما تتفقهون فيه. That you're not going to get any understanding of this book. You need to really spend time with this book and study it properly, then you will understand this book. So this shows that it took 40. So we can assume that Imam Malik rahimahullah, he was commanded by Abu Ja'far in the first year, the first Hajj in 140 Hijri. But then another transmission has it that Imam Malik rahimahullah worked on this book for 60 years. So Abu Nu'aym in Hilyat al-Awliya, he narrates what his sanad which reaches to Abu Khulayd, that he said, أقمت على مالك فقرأت الموطأ في 4 أيام. In 4 days I read the whole Muwatta. So Imam Malik rahimahullah said, علم جمعه شيخ في 60 سنة أخذتموه في 4 أيام لا فقهتم أبدا. He's saying that a sheikh had to take 60 years to write this book. So now we can then mean, we can understand that probably 60 years from 179 would mean around the year 120, when Imam Malik was about 27 years old. So we can assume that probably Imam Malik rahimahullah here is indicating that to that time when he started on the small scale after seeing Abdul Aziz al-Majishun's book. So in this way we can make the tatbiq between all these different narrations. If he's mentioning 40 years, he's referring to when the leader instructed him. He's mentioning 60 years, he's mentioning when he started on a small scale in his personal capacity when he saw the book of Abdul Aziz al-Majishun. But the point to appreciate from all of this is that you have an expert spending 40 to 60 years just on this one book. So that is enough to show us the lofty status of the Muwatta. Now, as if that was not enough, that Imam Malik, an expert and a muhaddith of his status, is spending so much time with this book, he also then says that he showed this book to 70 jurors. So it's like a quality check. 70 jurors had to check this book. So Abu al-Hasan ibn Fahr, he mentioned that in his book Fadail Malik, what he sent وتستند to Imam Malik رحمه الله عرضت كتابي هذا على 70 فقيها من فقهاء المدينة, that I showed this book to 70 jurists of Medina. So again, yesterday, we spoke about the fatwa that we should show our whatever answers we write to our asatidah. So whatever work we do, we should always show it to our elders. We should get all our work reviewed. You can see Imam Malik rahimahullah, 70 fuqaha is showing it. So the longer you have the opportunity of discussing your research and showing your work to your elders, the more blessings, inshallah, you will present to the ummah. So don't become independent, please, until you have years of research and you have decades of understanding, of decades of experience behind you. Then maybe you can now start to say qultu, but don't start to say qultu from a very young age. Because besides just correcting your errors, your elders will also, they'll give you additional points. So you can also add this point, so it's going to enhance the quality of your work. And more importantly, they're going to give you du'as. But the cherry on top is that if anyone has to object on what you're doing, then you can just say that, if you want to answer them, you can say that this sheikh, he told me that I must do it. That why are you studying online? This, I made mashwara, this senior person, he told me to do it. So finish. It's like chapter close. You've got an objection, go discuss it with him. You got an objection on me teaching Muwatta online, go discuss it with Fazlur Rahman, don't discuss it with me. So, or you can just rest assured that they at least approve of your work. Now, with regards to the method of compilation, so I'm trying to conclude, but you're traveling very fast on this highway, so, and my brake pads are finished. I need to go sit in a khanqa and renew my brake pads, inshallah, but let's see, quickly I'll try to complete. So the method in which Imam Malik rahimahullah compiled his Muwatta, he didn't compile it in a way which is common, like where you sit and write, etc. Rather, he would dictate the book in the initial stages, that he would dictate it. Now, if a student wanted a copy of this book, now how would he get it? He needed to attend the lessons, and then he needed to write everything down. Well, after Imam Malik initially dictated it, he would make another student read. We mentioned about that yesterday. So if anyone wanted a copy of the Muwatta, they needed to come to Medina. They needed to sit in that lesson. The other student is reading it to Imam Malik, and he needs to write it down. And it's on this basis that you got lots of different riwayat. So it's also in this light that Ahmad al-Shamsi, he mentions in his book, he says the challenges of defining authorial agency are compounded in specific historical contexts and cultures of writing. That in the early Islamic written tradition, the way in which important works such as Ibn Ishaq Sirah and Malik ibn Anas Muwatta were composed and disseminated meant that the role of the nominal author or originator of the text was entwined with that of the subsequent transmitters. So he says then that the author's original text, insofar as there was only one, would be copied by students who would then check the accuracy of their copies against the author's copy in other 3 sessions. That means when they're reading to the sheikh, so in which either the original or the copy was read aloud. Student's copy, thus certified, became the student's recension, which was transmitted to the subsequent students. So this here is a very, very important point to keep in mind, so that you can discuss the differences in the various riwayat. Inshallah, we'll discuss it when maybe not tomorrow, maybe on Friday night. Tomorrow I want to discuss the comparison between Bukhari and Sahih al-Bukhari and the Muwatta, which is more authentic and which is the most authentic book after the Quran, inshallah. I want to discuss that tomorrow. So Sheikh Shamsi, and that is why I'm racing through all of this here. He then concludes the paragraph saying that the author, meanwhile, would continue to teach the text to further students of his own, making changes to the text and adding and subtracting material in the process. Consequently, the students' recensions would naturally come to differ over time, and this is how you get all the differences in the difference of those in the different riwayat of the Muwatta. Allama Kawthari rahimahullah, he wrote, فَأَخَذَ مَالِكٌ يُلْقِي الْمُوَطَّأَ عَلَى أَصْحَابِهِ So I'm just going to quote the Arabic. فيتلقونه منه سماعا ولم يكن تأليفه الكتاب ليعطيه للناس فينسخوه ويتداولوه بينهم كعادة أهل الطبقات المتأخرة في تصانيفهم، بل كان تعويله حين ذاك على السماع فقط، وكان تأليفه الكتاب لنفسه خاصة. So he only wrote it for his own self. لئلا يغلط فيما يلقيه على الجماعة كعادة أهل طبقته من العلماء في تأليفهم، ولذا كان يزيد فيه وينقص منه حسب ما يبدو له في كل دور من أدوار التصنيع المختلفة. So at times he took the liberty, wants to add something, wants to delete something, because it's his personal copy. فاختلفت نسخ الموطأ ترتيبا وتبويبا وزيادة ونقصا وإسنادا وإرسالا على اختلاف مجالس المستملين. فأصبح رواة على اختلاف الختمات هم مدونوها في الحقيقة. منهم من سمع عليه الموطأ 17 مرة. So some of them they sat with Imam Malik for 17 years أو أكثر أو أقل، بأن لازمهم مددا طويلا تسع تلك المرات. And so many decades, so many years and even decades of their life they spent with Imam Malik rahimahullah, and they also made these additions and in their transmissions of the Muwatta. So over these 4 to 6 decades, every year when the Muwatta was being read to Imam Malik, he analyzed the narrations and he inspected the verdicts and he improved on the content. And this is how now that year after year he's continuously adding, deleting, editing. And that is why when he initially wrote the Muwatta, there were many more narrations. Atiq al-Zubayri, he says, وضع مالك الموطأ على نحو من 10,000 حديث, that he had 10,000 ahadith. فلم يزل ينظر في that continuously every year فلم يزل ينظر فيه سنة ويسقط منه حتى بقي هذا. So initially when he wrote the Muwatta, there were 10,000 ahadith in the Muwatta. Then he continuously started to delete and delete and delete and delete. Then maybe it was in a joking way that he must have said it. He said that he was deleting so much, ولو بقي قليلا, if he didn't pass away, لأسقطه كله. Maybe he would have deleted the entire Muwatta. We wouldn't have had the Muwatta. So Atiq al-Zubayri is mentioning that Imam Malik rahimahullah initially had 10,000 narrations in the Muwatta. But since he was deleting every year, you have other scholars who mentioned lesser amounts. For example, Allama Suyuti rahimahullah, he quotes from Al-Qiyam al-Harasi, Inna Muwatta Malik kana ishtamala ala 9,000 hadith. So now there's no contradiction. Maybe he's talking about after Imam Malik already deleted those 1,000 narrations. So he's mentioning that he had 9,000 narrations. And then he says, Summa, that he continuously deleted, hatta raja ala 700, that there was only 700 which remained. Then others, they mention amounts that are less than half. قال سليمان بن بلال لقد وضع مالك الموطأ وفيه 4,000 حديث. He mentioned that there were 4,000 narrations. Besides just the narrations that were deleted, there were also narrations that were added as well. So Ibn Hazm, he says آخر شيء روي عن مالك من الموطأ is the Muwatta of Abu Mus'ab and the Muwatta of Ahmad ibn Ismail al-Sahmi. وفي هذين الموطئين نحو من 100 حديث زائدة. So he's mentioning that this is 100 extra narrations. So he wasn't only deleting, he was also increasing. So technically you can say that he was swapping the narrations. So just all this here I just mentioned so that you can understand how the amounts were changing every year. And also now that you learned that this is the reason why there's going to be differences in the various transmissions of the Muwatta. So Mullah Zakaria Kanlawi rahimahullah, he wrote, فَإِنَّهُ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ كَانَ يُنْقِيهِ وَيَخْتَبِرُهُ عَامًا فَعَامًا وَلِذَا تَرَى الْإِخْتِلَافِ النُّسَخ مِنَ الزِّيَادَةِ وَالنُّقْصَانِ. Because every year he's refining it and assessing it, so therefore you're going to find all these differences. So inshallah we'll talk about that when if we get a chance when talking about the riwayat. Now, with regards to the very first to write, so Imam Malik he gave the title as Muwatta. So it is claimed that he was the very first person to ever write a Muwatta. Ibn Fahr, he says, لم يسبق مالك أحد على هذه التسمية. But Imam Suyuti, he quotes the statement of Ibn Fahr. But this here is debatable because Allama Khatib rahimahullah, he quotes from his teacher Ahmad ibn Muhammad, who quotes from Imam Dar Qutni, أول من صنف من البصريين سعيد بن أبي عروبة وحماد بن سلمة وصنف ابن جريج. So remember I told you I'm trying to conclude. So I'm going to conclude shortly inshallah. Then ومالك بن أنس وكان ابن أبي ذئب صنف موطأ فلم يخرج. That Ibn Abi Dhi'b he wrote, but he mentions that it wasn't circulated. So Ibn Abi Dhi'b, he was elder than Imam Malik rahimahullah. He was born in the year 80 Hijri and he passed away in 159 Hijri. So to say that Imam Malik was the first, you're going to need proof. That how is it that he was the first? What proof there is? We have proof to say that in 158 Hijri, the Muwatta was not complete. The Qadi Iyaz is mentioning it. And Ibn Abi Dhi'b passed away in 159 Hijri. Also, as a side note, With regards to the statement, Imam Darqutni, rahmallah, he probably means by the words lam yukhraj that it did not become popular. And maybe it's also possible that he was unaware of this Muwatta of because this Muwatta actually was in circulation. It actually also survived for a few centuries thereafter. When you read Nasb al-Raya of Alama Zayla'i, then you'll find that he's quoting directly from the Muwatta of Ibn Abi Dhi'b. So the statement of saying falam yukhraj, it has to be interpreted that probably Imam Darqutni rahimahullah did not see this. And then maybe if you want to take that statement which we quoted earlier, to say that when Imam Malik rahimahullah, when he first saw that of the Muwatta of Umar of Abdul Aziz ibn al-Majishun, now that it means that Imam Malik saw that Muwatta. So it's a clear proof that Imam Malik's Muwatta was not the first. So therefore it will be incorrect to say that Imam Malik rahimahullah was the first to write the Muwatta. So Jazakumullah khairan for staying extra time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all with ilm, and apologies for going extra time. Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow. We'll discuss a completely different subject, inshallah, with a comparison between the Muwatta and Sahih Bukhari. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.